The next speaker is Deputy Mattie McGrath.
Yes, Minister, if I could come in on that point, actually, Minister, you quoted at a press conference recently that in one weekend, 6,000 pubs were inspected and visited, and you found that 26 of them were non-compliant. And you compare that then with the meat plants. Indeed, I have one in my own town of Care. Only 39 inspections were carried out in meat plants, and a total 30 of those were pre-announced. You could visit 6,000 pubs in a weekend, and you can only do 39 meat plants, and 30 of them are pre-announced. Those figures are stark. They are your own figures that you quoted, and those figures in the pubs were over one weekend. And the Gardaí have enough to do without visiting those. What have you got against the pubs? What have you got against them? Because they haven't been found guilty of anything, but they have been blackguarded and they have been destroyed. Also the Rinca the dance schools, the musicians and the artists, they're really being left behind here and being crushed and left behind. There's a whole cohort in, Minister, I want to ask you to reply to as well, is about people with disabilities, especially anyone on the autism spectrum or any of those, special needs children. They have really suffered, and they're not fully back up and running yet, and huge attention must be given to them. It's a huge challenge and very challenging, and they must be supported, as I said, because they need that. Minister, we also had a situation in Golden with Welsh mushrooms. Why wasn't this testing done? Is it not done in the plant when there's ample space, rather than going into the middle of a village, and frightening people, set up a camp there? And I salute everybody that did it. I salute the community for their engagement. And there's a further testing next Saturday, which should be done on the plant. There's plenty of space there, away from the local village, and just kind of putting fear into people, when they see the army arriving in and the Gardaí and everybody else, the whole entourage. So as I said, the inspections are pretty stark. And as I said, the whole situation regarding the treatment of the publicans that are open, and letting you call them what you like restaurants today. There are pubs, many that do food. More you're forced to do food, because apparently the €9 worth of food is better than any antidote or any the thing that you're trying to set up, that you're trying to cure, you're trying to get. So the food is the cure. That's what you're giving out, those mixed messages. And they're very wrong and very damaging. And I would put it to you, Minister, that yourself and the President Taoiseach have dropped the ball here since you took over. And I wished you well when you took over. You dropped the ball and you've lost the public confidence. And some of that was your own response in press conferences, where you equated the virus with children being on a trampoline, us driving a car. They're pretty silly things to say, or else the virus isn't that serious. So one or the other, please, could you explain?
Thank you for that, Deputy. Chair, if I just might, I have the figures here regarding the HSA. So there were 23 meat plant inspections in August so far, and 22 of the 23 were unannounced. I just want to note that the Health and Safety Authority does not fall under the remit of the Department of Health, but obviously we're working very closely with them.
The last fortnight, because that's a big jump up from the figures that we were given by the HSA here 2 weeks ago.
Yes, agreed. Deputy McGrath, do we need more HSA inspections? That is a question directly for Minister Varadkar, but I can give you my opinion as Minister for Health. As we look at the meat processing plants and other high-risk areas, I want to see as many inspections as possible to make sure that the high-risk workplaces in particular are compliant with the protocols that have been put in place. And my preference is for unannounced inspections for obvious reasons. You asked why the pubs were closed. Deputy, can I say I share your frustration? It's not fair. It is not fair for publicans around the country. I know that. The reality is we are dealing with a virus that is close to us having to lock down the country again. The public health advice is that we are at a tipping point, and we are doing everything we can to suppress this virus, to stop a second lockdown, to get the schools open, which we now have, to keep the businesses open, to protect jobs, to get the hospitals open, and so forth. And the public health advice and evidence is that in other countries, unfortunately, where the pubs have opened, they have been associated very quickly with outbreaks, and that's the reason. I really don't want to be here saying that. I would like nothing more than to be announcing, and hopefully I will be as soon as possible, announcing they have to be reopened. The same applies, unfortunately, to dance schools. It's not about going after anybody. It's about trying to save lives. And the measures that the government has brought in for this 3.5-week period are based on the evidence that the National Public Health Emergency Team has for where and how this virus spreads. And what they found is that large indoor gatherings are one of the areas where this virus spreads, unfortunately. But in being able to target that, what we're able to avoid is much wider shutdowns, because our experts know more about the virus than they knew 4 or 5 months ago. I fully agree with you, Deputy, on disability services. It is an absolute priority. With regard to Golden, might I respectfully push back, Deputy, because you've made some comments about why was it set up here, and people are intimidated by the guards coming in, the National Ambulance Service coming in. Could I respectfully just push back on that, Deputy? What happened was an outbreak was detected very, very quickly, and the healthcare services of the state were deployed in Tipperary almost instantly. All workers were sent home, all workers were isolated, all workers were tested, and because of that ability to move quickly and comprehensively, we have the best chance of stopping the virus spreading out into the community in Tipperary. So I understand your questions, and I know you are giving voice to the frustrations of the people you represent. But on this particular issue, can I just remind you that what happened in Tipperary was exactly what we have to see to suppress this virus, which is the public health services working quickly and comprehensively to deal with the clusters as they emerge.
But just briefly, 10 miles away then in Care, the factory wasn't closed. The test was done by a private company behind closed doors. You know, I wanted to know why it wasn't tested on site, which there was space in the mushroom plant, I know, with plenty of space, and then why the difference between what happened in Golden and what happened 10 miles away. The HSE did an excellent job, and the Gardaí and everybody in Golden, with the locals, and I compliment the local community. A whole different story in Care.
Minister.
Thanks, Deputy. I can't speak to any individual company that hires a private company for testing. I can't speak to that.
The next speaker is from